Hello, I'm Dr. Leonard Horowitz, the author of 18 books and 6 documentaries, most dealing with drug industry secrets, bioterrorism risks, genetic engineering firms, and vaccination policies damaging public health, safety, consumer confidence, and the environment. I hold a postdoctoral Harvard University degree in public health and media persuasion technologies, research and development, that I gained to direct media productions to improve public health through educational programming, consumer awareness, and self-care. On December the 11th, 2015, a dengue fever outbreak was headlined in my local newspaper, the Hawaii Tribune-Herald, quoting Hawaii's leading epidemiologist and vaccination advocate, Dr. Sarah Park. Dr. Park is one of few officials, including agents representing drug industry interests, including Pfizer, on the National Biodefense Science Board. In that position, Dr. Park is said to have advised U.S. Health and Human Services Secretary and Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response in matters of preventing, preparing for, and responding to bioterrorist attacks and outbreaks of infectious diseases. I know this about Dr. Park because I was invited by PBS television in Hawaii to debate her, and Hawaii State Senator and Dr. Joshua Green, along with my colleague, Dr. Janet Edgehill, on matters of forcing school children to get vaccinated. Our segment is freely viewable on revolutiontelevision.net and through PBS archives. The newspaper headline quoted Dr. Park as saying, "It's on you. It's not just about waiting for the Department of Health to come spray, because that's not going to happen, frankly. We don't have the resources to spray every sign of mosquitoes." The Tribune-Herald added, dengue fever could be here to stay, unless the public helps with prevention. So in this narration and slide presentation prepared for the County Council of the Big Island of Hawaii, who is having to deal with this emergency, I am serving to share what I know about this threat to our health and safety. Dr. Park was also quoted in the Hawaii Free Press as stating, "Scientists in England have created a sterile male mosquito, which if released, would flood a region with genetically altered mosquitoes and eventually kill off a population. Males actually don't bite," she continued. "The females bite in order to prepare to be able to lay eggs." Dr. Park said that Hawaii Department of Health officials were recently contacted by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service about the sterile mosquitoes. Officials note any release of mosquitoes would have to go through several layers of approval. The thought was Hawaii is an ideal location to try this because we share no borders and we have the capacity to potentially, if this works, have islands with no mosquitoes, Dr. Park said. Now, I find this idea of releasing genetically engineered mosquitoes to combat dengue fever contrary to both science and common sense, unless you seek to kill a lot of people most profitably, which, in my opinion, based on the evidence I'm about to present, is the secret agenda not even known to Dr. Park, who I experience to be most ignorant, arrogant, and therefore deadly. Dr. Park should be aware of studies, such as this one from doctors in Japan and Thailand, stating that the targeted mosquitoes may simply move to another area or a different species of mosquitoes, which also transmits dengue fever, can move into this area. Complex immune responses to the 4 types of dengue virus means that a partial reduction in mosquito numbers can reduce cross-immunity to different serotypes and increase the number of cases of severe forms of the disease, dengue hemorrhagic fever, which is more likely to be fatal." End quote. This will impact public health, tourism, and the environment, and compels the question, who or what is Oxitec, the company that produces these genetically modified mosquitoes, and can they be trusted with our lives and sacred environment? The answer to these questions can be found on the internet, tied to an organization called ISIS Innovation. Curiously, ISIS Innovation and ISIS Technologies are financially linked to the ISIS terrorist organization, as you will see in a minute. ISIS Innovation was formed under Oxford University umbrella. ISIS Technologies, Inc. is a subsidiary of ISIS Innovation, a private commercial enterprise involving high financing, largely benefiting Oxford University officials. Ironically, the name ISIS derives from the Egyptian goddess Isis, administering health, marriage, and wisdom. Oxitec is one of many ISIS Innovation spin-out companies, deriving from academic research generated within and thereby owned by the University of Oxford that has spun out a new company every 2 months on average. The creation of these companies mainly benefits outside private investors. Purportedly, millions more are returning to the university to sponsor more research for further developments put through this same commercial private equity interest pipeline. You can see from the University Challenge Seed Fund advertising that a lot of money is incoming from this enterprise. Technology transfer services in this ISIS enterprise directs governments, other universities, and research institutes internationally. And this direction includes licensing and commercializing to partners or partnering corporations that receive these transfers, Oxitec being one. The chairman of the ISIS Innovation Limited Group and a non-executive director of Oxford Instruments Group is also the senior managing director and chairman of European investment banking for this organization, that is, Mr. Bernard Taylor. Under Bernard's leadership, ISIS Technologies has advanced global leadership in diversified industries such as security, power, and communications, mental health, environmental cleanup, education, and, quote, control solutions, end quote. The ISIS enterprise is heavily invested in the pharmaceutical industry, outputting new drugs and vaccines, including those used globally for bioterrorism preparedness and response. Here you can see a timeline of UCSF investments. That's not the University of California, San Francisco. UCSF in this case is the University Challenge Seed Fund, sourcing from private equity investment firms. In this case, some of the largest and wealthiest in the world. Here you can see that Oxitec is listed twice in the biomedical field. You can see Oxitec is involved in everything from creating novel biological membranes used in genetic engineering and transferring genes from various species to other species, including mosquitoes and humans, including vaccines for the flu and controlled delivery systems for biologicals. These include genetically modified viruses and bacteria. You can also see that ISIS and Oxford Technologies finances antiviral therapies for malaria and more, herbicides for companies such as Monsanto, owned by the Pfizer drug company, and even a smart delivery system for biocide, that is, a life killer, although it is not clear from this slide what life ISIS seeks to kill. Most relevant to this dengue fever emergency on the Big Island of Hawaii, here you can see that ISIS has financed a dengue fever vaccine, as well as a viral vectored multi-genotype vaccine therapy for papillomavirus infections, meaning that this enterprise clearly seeks to develop or has already developed genetically modified mosquitoes that can deliver genetically modified dengue fever viruses for novel delivery systems to kill either the mosquitoes or we humans. Moreover, you should note ISIS's involvements and investments in the, quote, Mind Foundry company and Mind Weaver companies. These are developing advanced media and communications technologies to alter the way we the people think and learn about virtually everything. This technology transfer ultimately impacts the mass media and the delivery of messages required for biopreparedness and terrorism response. Now here is where our internet search gets particularly interesting. You can see that the chairman of ISIS Innovation Limited, Bernard Taylor's team, includes Evercore partners. extremely wealthy venture capitalists, and the Lagardère Group, the French organization effectively controlled by the Sheikh of Qatar, who, along with the CIA, is the world's leading financier of ISIS terrorists, now controlling half of Syria, and selling their oil to the Sheikh through the Shell Oil Company, controlled largely by the Sheikh and the royal family of the Netherlands, relatives of Queen Elizabeth II. Tracing these connections further, we find that Chairman Taylor is partnered with Evercore's founder and Blackstone Group leader Roger Altman, the previous Deputy Secretary of the United States Treasury, largely controlling NBC Universal Comcast along with GE Capital, and Mr. Pete Peterson, the former Secretary of Commerce. Moreover, Evercore's financial investments with Sheikh Al Thani in the Lagardère Group largely controls the Muslim world's Al Jazeera media, as well as the Bataclan Theater, the site of the bloodiest Paris attacks on Friday the 13th of November 2015. That's right. You heard me correctly. Lagardère owns the Bataclan, the site of the massacre, as well as the media controlling most of the publishing world, the persuasive mass media, and the entertainment industry. You can also see that Mr. Taylor is closely associated with the J.P. Morgan Chase Rockefeller banking enterprise. Consequently, multinational agents, agencies, and corporations are positioned to profit, very likely having loosed the dengue fever mosquito vectors on the Big Island of Hawaii. The evidence I have presented begs urgent attention pursuant to the high probability that this mosquito outbreak is a treacherous attack against we the people and our sacred environment. I have provided ISIS Technologies' financial intelligence and Oxford University investments into Oxitec and related viral vaccine vector studies, including dengue and other genetically altered human pathogens. I have further evidence that Dr. Sarah Park is neither competent or without a bias to administer decision-making in this regard. Meanwhile, regarding the matter of global terrorism largely wielded by media misrepresentations, ISIS, otherwise called ISIL or IS, having been funded by Sheikh Al Thani of Qatar and our own CIA, as Hawaii Senator Tulsi Gabbard bravely broadcast recently, is a diversion away from the more threatening matter of advancing more profitable depopulation through toxic GMO-laced vaccinations. The evidence I have presented links the leading media moguls and biotechnology agents and agencies profiting from generating bioterrorism, including dengue fever vaccine industrialists, especially Oxitec, who engaged in genetically mutating and cloning mosquitoes, purportedly for defense and cancer research, with ISIS Technologies and Oxford University, their most lucrative private industry interests served by this association, this commercial enterprise. The urgency of this situation and evidence presented provides probable cause to demand a thorough investigation into this matter for the health and safety of Hawaii citizens and people virtually everywhere, especially in light of Dr. Park's statements and their implications, implying or imposing unacceptable risks to people and our environments. Add to this twilight zone predicament the recent unprecedented goodwill the CDC has demonstrated, applauding what is happening on our island and Dr. Park's actions. And any reasonable person can now see the urgency in these matters. People do not realize this is how hardball is played in the big leagues of global commerce. People do not know that Monsanto is owned by Pfizer, a world-leading vaccine maker and bioterrorism preparedness supplier, collaborating with Dr. Park. Time and time again, when global industrialists see major political resistance arising, they always attack it with bombs, biologicals, and propaganda. Always. A great example is the 2014 Ebola outbreak in Guinea, Liberia, of the 1976 Ebola strain that directly followed Liberian President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf's opposition to big oil's inequitable contracts. People do not know that the main ingredients in all vaccines are GMOs. People do not realize this commercial enterprise poses far greater risks to civilization than other forms of GMO technology transfer, such as open-air applications by big agriculture. People do not realize that by getting vaccinated, either by mosquitoes or pharmacists, they are receiving direct injections into their bloodstreams of intoxicating GMOs, risking their own health and safety, subsequent genetic alterations going viral across the human race, future generations being damaged from mother-to-child transmissions of genetically altered pathogens, or interpersonal or environmental transmissions. Consumers are simply defrauded into believing vaccines are safe and effective, or, in this case, releasing genetically altered mosquitoes is a good idea. People are clueless these mosquitoes possibly contain genetically altered dengue fever viruses, claimed useful for immunization. Finally, members of the Hawaii County Council and others listening to this narration have not even considered that this dengue fever so-called outbreak may have something to do with the Hawaii County Council having righteously and rightfully opened Pandora's box with its passage of the anti-GMO legislation that prompted the ongoing litigation in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. In fact, there is a natural tendency that you have as a trusting and caring person to fall into denial about what you have just heard and witnessed herein. Denial that this intelligence is real. Yet, still, what is unfolding is our responsibility. And that your denial, or not, the circumstances presented here present a real threat to your own health and safety, especially if you live on the Big Island of Hawaii. And, in fact, based on these facts that you have just witnessed, you would be very foolish to neglect the very high probability that this dengue fever outbreak in Hawaii County is your and your constituents' payback for having done the right thing in the past, making Hawaii County the first county in the United States to present a problem for the open-air testing of GMOs. We each have a public duty to examine very carefully the evidence presented herein and in related publications, to raise these urgent matters during forthcoming hearings, and to support an independent investigation. The first ethical consideration should be raised is the potential conflicts of interest in Dr. Park's associations and representations pursuant to the dengue fever outbreak on the Big Island of Hawaii. I'm Dr. Leonard Horowitz. Thanks for taking the appropriate legislative and citizen actions in response to this important, albeit shocking, information. Bye for now.